In my presentation on Tuesday, I showed a quote by Juan Bautista Alberdi, which read, "To freedom, it is worth the free mind of a worker compared to Philip II lawyer." If Alberdi were here today, he would say, "To freedom, it is worth the free mind of a worker like David Wetzel than all other PhDs from the London School of Economics." That would be a paraphrasing of Alberdi's phrase today. When this conference finished, in the room next door, a book was presented, which is called The Rule of Law, written by an old friend of mine, and presented by an economic personality from the Austrian school, perhaps the most important representative of the Austrian school in Argentina, called Alberto Venegas Lynch and Martín Krause. At the end of the presentation, I asked them a question. I said, "Gentlemen, 100 years ago, in this very city of Buenos Aires, if a worker bought a suit at a store, he would be given a plot of land as a gift in exchange for buying that suit. 100 years have elapsed, and that suit today costs less than it was worth 100 years ago. The potatoes and onions that those workers ate are worth less than they were worth back then. But the plot of land, on the other hand, which was given as a free gift for purchasing a suit, today costs $60,000. So workers have to hypothecate half of their working lives to have access to that land." So I wonder, do you think, I mean, these three big thinkers of the world economy, do you think there is any linkage, any relationship between this brutal increase in land values and the increase in social violence, the unemployed, crime, slums, the mortgage crisis, and the crisis that is sweeping Europe? I asked this to these people, and the answer was, "I don't know, and I don't answer about what I don't speak of." Second economist, he said, "That happens because there's no lending. If there were lending, workers might be able to access land to build their homes," to which I answered, "But well, precisely, the mortgage crisis was a consequence of the existence of loans. The plot of land which was given as a gift 100 years ago and which now costs $60,000 perhaps would cost $120,000 if there were loans." Three members of the academia who went through the London School of Economics and who participate of the very important meeting every year remained silent, could not answer my question. So I felt panic. I was in panic because I was in front of three terrorists. These men are three terrorists who, from academia, provide the conditions so that all over the world bomb men will mushroom. They give room to the London fires. They give room to what Fred Harrison anticipated about a potential Third World War. That's my feeling. And that is why we have to go after these people. These people are the devil itself. They have made hell out of heaven. They are the devil, an impersonation of devil. They are economists and lawyers, but who are the devil themselves, who are generating this social order. I would not like to interrupt you, but there are others who wish to ask questions. Let me finalize with two conclusions. When he quoted Robin Hood, Robin Hood would not take money away from the rich to give to the poor. That's fake. Robin Hood would take money away from tax collectors and return that to the owners of that money, which is totally different from thinking that he stole from the rich to give to the poor. These lessons, these teachings, he received in the Middle Ages from the Salamanca school, which I also quoted. Their main leaders They said that it was a duty and not a right of the good Christian to kill the despotic king, meaning the one that charges taxes. Hence, his strength to take the tax money from the tax collectors and return it to their true owners, which each Christian should do. And lastly, one last comment. It is very important to draw a difference between rent and tax, because while taxes are always an increase in the production cost, which ends up being an increase in the price of the end product, the increase that is taken away from the worker to be given to the predator. The rent, on the other hand, is part of the production cost and may not be carried to price. This is a very important difference to make. We have to fight for the existence of rent and for the abolition of taxes. That's it. Thank you.
The Duke of Westminster was given all of this land because he beat the French in battle and allowed the British to be free of that second colonization of England. Secondly, is it important in this discussion to somehow blame people who own land now as if we are the cause of all this? Because you give that, you do make that impression, and I don't think it's necessary. I think you detract from your message. Thank you.
I would like to, first of all, endorse, is it Engineer who spoke with the first comment? I think it's very useful, and what he said, I get as angry as he does with academics. I won't bore you with the stories I could tell. The only point I would differ from is your last sentence, I think, where you said rent is part of the production cost. And I disagree with that. Rent is a surplus. It is not a cost of production. But the point you were making is that we should have a different name for it other than a tax, and I agree with you on that. Peter, you're confusing the Duke of Wellington, who allegedly won the Battle of Waterloo in 1812. He did it with the help of the Germans. If they hadn't arrived on the scene at the right time, England and probably South Africa and other former colonies would have no Napoleonic law now, not the law that we ended up with. And I think that might have been better, actually. But I was referring to the Duke of Westminster. And he personally inherited his wealth. His family, the Grenvilles, only became the Duke of Westminster in the Queen Victoria's time, after the Duke of Wellington had won his spurs. But the family had acquired land through marriage, and I would suggest trickery. And I wrote to the Duke of Westminster and asked could I meet him. Well, he didn't want to meet me, but he had the chief executive of his company, Grosvenor Estates, to meet me. And I said to this guy, you're actually running two businesses. One is looking after the historic land wealth that the current Duke has inherited and will be passing on to his grandchildren unless we change things. But the other part of your business is as a developer. Grosvenor Estates does development in places like Cambridge, places like Liverpool, and that activity is welcome. They employ good architects and they come up with good plans and they have good ideas. And I said, under land value tax, you will lose income from the historic estates that have been inherited, the land value. But the work you do as developers will be called upon by other landowners who will want their land developed so they have an income with which to pay their land value tax bill. And so I suggested that they had nothing to fear from a land value tax. They should look at it not as a problem, but as an opportunity, and an opportunity to give to society rather than just keep taking.
Hola, bueno, yo la verdad que vine a escuchar.
I am not an economist myself. I was just listening attentively. I think that if you invested money in buying a plot of land, you are paying so many taxes. If you are adding new taxes on land, whether urban or rural, this is a sort of seizure or confiscation. So what I do not understand, how you assess the value of the land, what you are going to pay if a tax is levied on the land. And excuse me, because I am not an economist, I'm just listening. But bottom line, I think that we'd better not invest money in buying a plot of land, because we are going to waste money. I'm sorry, I'm not clear enough. I'm just the man in the street. So if I buy land and then I have to pay a tax on land, I'd better not invest.
Just given us all an economic lesson. If we tax land values, you would not invest in land. And when you say invest, what do you mean? What are you going to do? Are you going to roll your sleeves up and bring dirt from there and bring it here? No. You're not going to do any work for the land. You're going to hold it. You could put a fence around it and just wait for the community to grow, and the land value will increase, and you get wealth from producers for doing nothing. So we don't want you to invest in land. The land will be there whether you buy it or you do not buy it. And if you do not buy it, then it becomes cheaper for somebody who wants to buy it to build a home or to build a factory. So it is better that you don't buy it and not use it, but somebody else buys it who's going to use it. The land value tax facilitates that. The comparison I use, and maybe it's too extreme comparison, is slavery. When, in my country, Wilberforce got up in the House of Commons and said, I want to abolish the slave trade, other people got up and said, but what about the poor widow? Her husband has died. He's left her 3 slaves. You're going to force that woman into penury. She's going to have no wealth. We have to ask ourselves, is it right to have wealth in slaves? And the answer surely has to be no. We must ask ourselves, is it right to have wealth in what Mother Nature supplies freely? The answer surely has to be no. We heard earlier that maybe it would be possible for somebody to parcel the air we breathe, put it into balloons, and then sell us balloons so that we can continue breathing, because we can't live without the air. The balloons with the oxygen would sell at a very high price. The people who managed to capture all the oxygen to sell it to us would be very, very rich. Would that be right? Of course, those people would be kind people. They would start a charity. They would ask us to donate to the charity so that they could afford to give balloons to poor people so they could also have some oxygen. The position we have with land ownership is very similar to that position. We capture, through private ownership of land, something which is not ours. It is everybody's. And what I like about a land value tax, it doesn't depend upon the seizure of land. It doesn't depend upon violent revolution. It can be a soft revolution, a change that works harmoniously with society and encourages all that is good within us. I think it's a magic pill, and consequently I get told I'm a dreamer.